Imagine driving a car designed specifically for Mexico, for its mountains, its altitude, and its roads. An engine that doesn't lose power at altitudes above 2,000 meters, a suspension designed for rough roads, and a price that a Mexican family could afford. This isn't science fiction, it really happened. Mexican engineers achieved something extraordinary. They created a national brand capable of competing head-to-head with Ford and Volkswagen. In the early 1970s, its success was so great that it dominated the domestic market. But in February 1982, everything collapsed in a matter of weeks. This is the story of how Mexico had the perfect car brand, and how a single decision changed its destiny forever. To understand what VAM was, we have to go back to 1946. After World War II, Mexico was flooded with military jeeps that were no longer needed for war. The Mexican Industrial Credit Society, known as SOMEX, saw an opportunity to create a local distributor called Willis Mexicana to market these vehicles. What began as a small Jeep distributor in 1948 was already an authorized manufacturer. And in 1960, the agreement that would change everything arrived. Willis Mexicana signed with American Motors Corporation to bring its models to Mexico. But here's where it gets interesting. In 1962, the López Mateos administration issued a revolutionary decree. Automakers in Mexico had to have 60% domestic content within 3 years. Either they manufactured in Mexico or they left. The government saw Willis Mexicana as the future of the Mexican automotive industry. In December 1963, everything changed. The state took 60% of the company. American Motors Corporation retained 40%, but without management rights and with a minority vote. And they changed the name to Vehículos Automotrices Mexicanos, VAM. The message was clear. This was a Mexican company controlled by Mexicans for Mexicans. On November 5, 1964, something monumental happened. The engine plant in Lerma, state of Mexico, was inaugurated. An investment of 87.5 million pesos, 240,000 mastar. But it wasn't just another factory. It was a symbol that Mexico could manufacture engines from scratch. And this is where Mexican engineers demonstrated their genius. You see, American Motors cars were designed for the United States, flat roads, high-octane gasoline. But Mexico was different. Mexico City is 2,042 meters above sea level. Guadalajara is 1,066 meters, and Puebla is 235 meters. At that altitude, engines lose power, and Mexican gasoline had low octane. The solution from the VAM engineers was to create an engine that didn't exist anywhere else in the world. They took the 258 cubic inch engine block and enlarged the diameter of the cylinders by 0.16 inches. The result was a 282 cubic inch or 4.6 L engine. This engine generated 132 horsepower at 3,900 RPM and 216 pound-feet of torque at just 2,200 RPM. Why does this matter? Because that low-end torque perfectly compensated for the loss of power due to altitude and the low-octane rating of Mexican fuel. American Motors never manufactured this engine. It was 100% Mexican. One of the first models to roll off the assembly lines in Vallejo was the Rambler American, a compact car with a 6-cylinder engine that generated 90 horsepower. In 1960, VAM had 26 dealerships distributing these cars. They sold 322 units that year. By 1968, VAM was already an established brand, and that year they launched the model that would put them at the top. The AMC Javelin arrived in Mexico on April 1, 1968. This was the first muscle car accessible to Mexicans. It had a 6-cylinder engine with 155 horsepower, disc brakes, improved suspension, an FM radio, and sports seats. But BM assembled it and Mexicanized it. The Mexican versions had completely original interiors, modified engines, exclusive finishes, and a price that, although high, was within reach for many aspiring families. The Javelin was a resounding success. Between 1968 and 1973, more than 5,000 units were produced. But the story doesn't end there. VAM began competing in rallies, and not just competing, but winning. In national rally competitions, the VAM team faced legendary European brands such as Lancia and giants such as Ford. The BM American Rally became the car everyone wanted. It wasn't just transportation, it was a symbol of national pride. And then came the peak. In the early 1970s, the VAM American dominated the domestic market. By 1972, it had become the sales leader in the compact category. VAM's market share reached 25%. Let me repeat that. 1 in 4 people who bought a compact car in Mexico chose VAM. Between 1972 and 1973, 1 in 4 compact cars sold in Mexico was a VAM American. Volkswagen, Ford, General Motors, they were all behind. At BIM, they even had a slogan that said it all. When you're not a famous company, you have to make better cars. And they delivered. More models arrived. The Gremlin in 1974, the Pacer, the Rally AMX, each with Mexican modifications, each designed for the real needs of Mexican drivers. But what would come in 1981 would be the pinnacle of Mexican automotive pride. In 1981, VAM did something that no other automaker in Latin America had ever done. They designed a car from scratch. Well, almost from scratch. The engineers had a brilliant idea. They took the rear hatchback of the VAM Rally and welded it to the longer chassis of the VAM American. The result was a car that did not exist in any other market. A luxury hatchback, available in 2- and 4-door versions, 610 and 620. The process was artisanal, cutting and welding by hand. This made production slow and expensive, but the result was unique. Internally, they called it Code 90, but it needed a name for the market. They held a contest among VAM employees. The winning name was obvious, Lerma, in honor of the engine plant that had made the Mexican dream possible. On November 30th, 1980, during prime time, when the movie Love Story was being broadcast on television, the VAM Lerma was unveiled. VAM's slogan in 1980 was, "The dream is possible," and it was. The Lerma was equipped with a 4.6L Mexican engine with 132 horsepower, 3-speed Chrysler Torque Flight automatic transmission, luxury interiors with exclusive upholstered seats, air conditioning, aluminum wheels. It was a Mexican luxury car designed by Mexicans for Mexicans. In the first year, 1,153 units were sold. These were not the numbers of the American, but for a completely new luxury car, they were respectable. And the Lerma had a moment of international fame. It appeared in the '91 French film L'Opération Corned Beef, sharing credits with actor John Reno. Between 1960 and 1983, VAM produced a total of 272,366 vehicles at its Vallejo plant. Each one featured Mexican engineering, each one represented Mexican jobs. Each one was a small victory against foreign dependence. Mexico had proven it could have its own automotive industry, but February 1982 was just around the corner. Before we continue, if this video is surprising you, give it a like right now. It costs nothing, but it tells the algorithm that these kinds of stories are worth telling. Now, tell me something in the comments. If VAM had survived, do you think Mexico would have its own automotive brand competing globally today? I'll read your comments because what comes next explains why that never happened. To understand what killed VAM, we need to understand what was happening in Mexico. López Portillo's 6-year term had been an economic disaster. The country had gone massively into debt betting on oil. When crude prices fell, Mexico was exposed. On February 18, 1982, the Mexican peso collapsed. It went from 26.81 to 37.55 pesos per dollar in a single day, a 40% devaluation overnight. By August, the exchange rate was 48.79 pesos to the dollar, a cumulative devaluation of 82%. And on September 1st, 1982, López Portillo delivered the final blow, nationalizing the banking system and imposing exchange controls. What does this have to do with VAM? Everything. VAM was majority owned by Somex, the Mexican Industrial Credit Society, and Somex was bankrupt. The devaluation had multiplied dollar-denominated debts. Companies couldn't pay. The automotive market collapsed because no one had money to buy cars. In mid-1982, VAM declared suspension of payments. Production stopped. Thousands of workers were left unemployed. Dealerships closed. The Mexican dream was dying in real time, but there was a glimmer of hope. VAM's engineers continued to work. They were adapting the Mexican 6-cylinder engine to the new Jeep Cherokee XCOT that AMC planned to launch in 1983. American Motors was so impressed with the work that this project eventually influenced the development of the Cherokee we know today. But it was too late for VAM. In 1983, something happened that no one expected. The Mexican government did not bail out VAM. Instead, it paid Renault $200 million to buy the company and assume its debts. Yes, you read that right. Mexico paid a foreign company to take its national automaker. Renault tried to continue production. In February 1984, they sold the last VAM Ramblers in inventory. In total, 411 units manufactured in 1983, basic Americans, austere gremlins, some rallies. And with that, the Rambler era in Mexico came to an end. 23 years, 272,066 units produced. Renault began producing European models at the VAM facilities, the Alliance, and the Encore. But the magic was gone. By 1987, Renault also left Mexico. It sold its stake to Chrysler, and with that, the last vestige of VAM disappeared. Today, the Mexican government still holds the rights to the VAM name and brand, but the company never existed again. What would we have lost if VAM had survived? Think about it. An automaker that understood Mexican needs, engines designed for the altitude of our cities, suspension for our roads, affordable prices, Mexican engineers innovating, long before Maestretta, Bull, or Sakua existed. VAM showed us that Mexico could manufacture cars. Not just assemble, but manufacture, design, innovate. The Lerma was the first genuinely Mexican car, an achievement that took decades to replicate. But the 1982 crisis was unforgiving. The devaluation of the peso destroyed thousands of Mexican companies. VAM was just one of them. The decision not to rescue VAM and sell it to Renault marked the end of an era, the end of the dream of having a strong national automotive industry. Some will say that VAM was not viable, that its costs were too high, that the artisanal process of the Lerma could not compete with mass production. Perhaps they are right, but we will never know what would have happened if Mexico had bet on its own brand, if it had protected VAM as the United States protected Chrysler at the same time. Today, when you see a VAM American on the streets, it's not just a classic car, it's a reminder of what we could have been, of a time when Mexico manufactured cars that competed fiercely in the national rally, that fought Ford and Volkswagen for the compact car market, that 1 in 4 Mexicans proudly chose when looking for a compact car. VAM didn't die because it was a bad brand. It died because the Mexican economy collapsed, and when the authorities had to choose, they chose the easy way out, selling it to foreigners. Mexico had the perfect car brand in 1967, and in February 1982, one decision wiped it off the map. Thank you very much for watching. If you liked our content, don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel, as this really helps YouTube recommend our videos to more people. And don't forget to leave your opinion about this video in the comments.